Good morning. It's Saturday, July 4th, Independence Day. So we as a nation have been around some 240 odd years. And right now we might be in the middle of the biggest crisis this nation has ever seen. I can't measure that because I haven't been around for 240 years. But this pandemic has put us in a pretty sad situation. So I want to recite to you some facts that I found out because a poll was taken. And they asked people basically how they felt about the United States right now. Now, I'm not going to talk about the president's position and what they said about him during the poll because that creates animosity between my friends and myself. So we'll ignore him for a while. So I'll open by saying that 62% of Americans no longer see America as Ronald Reagan's shining city on the hill. So it looks like many Americans are beginning to agree on something, that everything about America is getting worse. I don't know if I agree with that, and it's hard to tell because I've been cooped up here for going on 3 months, maybe 4 months. So overall, we can categorically say that we are in a historically pessimistic mood heading into the holiday weekend. Many events have been canceled across the country, which doesn't help us. It's a big event that took place yesterday in the Black Hills of South Dakota. It was a traditional 4th of July event that had been canceled for many years, but it was reinstituted yesterday at the president's request. There was going to be no masks were required, but they were being handed out, so it was optional, and there would be no social distancing. That's according to the governor of the state. There would be no social distancing. And the Indian chief of the Agala Sioux Nation, a gentleman named Bear Runner, he was not happy. He was not happy with the event going on. He was not happy with the president showing up. He was not happy about anything. Because the Black Hills are sacred ground to the Sioux, and the monuments, the statue there of all the presidents, of those 4 presidents, is an insult to the nation, the Indian nation, the Sioux nation, because they were oppressed and they were killed, and Lincoln had a mass murder. He murdered 38 Sioux for some reason. He had them hanged. So the Indian nation is not happy with those presidents' faces in the middle of their mountain, right? But I'll get back to the poll. I have to get back to the poll now. There's no question that the pandemic is one of the major reasons that the public has a gloomy outlook. But there are many other things beyond the pandemic that are bothering the people in this country. 64% of Democrats and 60% of Republicans say that race relations, the focus of the mass protests since George Floyd was killed by the Minneapolis police officer, well, race relations are getting worse. Versus just 12% who say that race relations are getting better. And I can't see how anybody would think that race relations in this country are getting better. And 60% of Americans think that our standing in the world is getting worse. Versus just 15% who say it's getting better. Again, I don't know where these 15% are looking at. Our relations are getting worse. We're banned from going overseas because of the way we handle the pandemic. When's the last time that Americans were banned from going anyplace? They loved us. We came to their countries and we spent money. We were the great touring nation. This next stat is upsetting. Poll results indicate that just 40% of Americans agree that the United States is an exceptional country whose values, history, and political system are worthy of universal admiration. The 60% that's left over just think that we have unique strengths and weaknesses, and we're just like every other country. Now, I think a great piece of that is because the American dream is sort of dying. We used to believe that our children would have a better life than we did. And for most Americans now, that dream is not coming true. Our generation might be the last generation that has done better than their parents. A full 59% they're saying that they're worse off now than they were before. And there's many people who think they're much worse off. And 32% of the people think they're about the same as their parents, right? While 56% predict that their own children will be either somewhat worse off, much worse off, or about the same. So, I mean, the outlook in this country is getting dim. Here's a piece of information in which both Democrats and Republicans and independents seem to agree on. Many Americans are skeptical about our elected leader, but they trust the politicians to do what's best for the country more than they trust the CEOs of large corporations, at about 70% to 30%. And you can understand why, since these large corporations took their businesses and their factories and everything and put them in countries like Mexico and China and Malaysia and Indonesia, and they didn't keep the jobs here. But they had help from the politicians, because the politicians did nothing to prevent them from going overseas. So I'm not so sure that I agree with most of the American people. I don't know that I trust the CEOs any more than I trust the politicians, and I know I don't trust the politicians. So where does this leave us at this point? Most Americans are not sure. They're not sure where we are right now. 29% of them can't answer the questions about whether we're going to have good days ahead or bad days ahead. 25% of the country believes that the best days are behind us. So where does that leave us? That's over 70% of the people who are unsure where we're going. I can't blame them. I can't blame them based upon what we've seen in the past couple of years. The middle income and the lower income levels of employment in this country have not changed in over 10 years. There has been no movement to the upside in either of those classes. Our poverty levels have probably gotten worse. We have over 50 million people on food stamps, and most of those people work. It's not like they're not working. So there's a long way to go before we get back to the good old days. I can only hope that we use the recovery from the pandemic as a springboard to a much better future in this country. That will require great leadership and cooperation between the citizenry, the business community, the education community, and the government. And I thank you very much for listening to this madness. Have a great day.